Welcome to Hot Seat. I'm Scott Mitchell. Oklahoma's children lost a champion recently with the sudden and unexpected passing of Dr. Dwight Sublett, MD. One of Oklahoma's most decorated and respected pediatricians, Dr. Sublett was one of the 4 doctors we live streamed weekly on News 9, News on 6 platforms during the height of COVID and several times on a hot seat. He was always describing to the public and policymakers alike the reasons why and what needed to be done to improve the health of Oklahoma children. The 3 remaining members of the Fab Four docs got together to remember Dr. Sublett. Here's a portion of that discussion, and you can see the full interview on our website /YourVoteCounts. Dr. Whitman, your thoughts upon the passing of Dr. Sublett, who is so many Oklahomans got to know during COVID, starting about 3 years ago, and our last episode was a year ago in June. Your thoughts about the passing of this great physician, great human being?
A sad day for all of us. On September 12th, the Oklahoma House of Medicine lost a very important voice, and the 3 of us lost a very good friend with the passing of Dr. Dwight Sublett. The 4 of us spent many hours together informing Oklahomans about the truth about COVID-19, and Dwight was vital in keeping all of us informed about the pediatric population and the importance and safety of vaccinations, both for COVID and in general. And I know I speak for the 3 of us. We send our condolences to his wife, Ginger, his children, his grandchildren, and all the Sublett family at this time. David?
Yeah, I share your sentiments. Certainly thinking and praying for the Subletts and their family as they kind of navigate this new reality. It's always tough to lose a family member, and certainly Oklahoma has lost a real champion, not only of physicians. He was president of the Oklahoma chapter, I think, of the American Academy of Pediatrics for years, been very involved in organized medicine, which is a real voice for physicians, but more importantly, for pediatrics. He was a real voice for his patients. I think we could all agree that pediatricians are some of the most unsung heroes in medicine, that are essential to relationships with families, with children, and he was a voice for an advocate for pediatric health across the state. Certainly worked in Stillwater for many, many years, and then I believe went into practice for a little while before his passing. But we certainly send our hearts out to all of those who knew him, all of those who were treated by him, who may be feeling the sting a little bit, and most importantly to his family, who certainly are going to have to move on and remember what a great doctor and a great dad and husband and grandfather he was.
John, do you have?
Yeah, condolences and prayers go out to the family and his friends. I think the sense of loss I personally feel, and I know others feel, is a tribute to the fact we lost a really valuable member of the medical community. You can sense it just when you hear the news, and your heart sinks a bit, and you realize that somebody who you cared about is gone, and somebody who cared about you. Through COVID, I think he was a wonderful expression of a doctor's doctor, somebody who used their talents generously and effectively to help us through a time of crisis. I think of those calls and how he was such a moderating voice, and how he piped in his experience with patients to humanize the issue of adolescents who are struggling with the separation. And he was a real contributor to my sense of balance, trying to get through the crisis and figure out where to go, and expertise, a doctor's doctor, really, in that he brought the best of his human side to the care of patients. He was involved with organized medicine, which is somebody who uses their free time and their energies to try and uplift the whole profession and its contributions back to society. And he was a senior leader in his field and in medicine generally by taking responsible positions, leadership president type positions. So again, I think his legacy is the wonderful thing. It's all we can hope to leave behind. We, in our time here is, our kids, our families. Certainly his family is a testament to what he did there, and being a wonderful father, grandfather, husband, probably a wonderful kid. I didn't know him back then, but his legacy to medicine, he left an imprint, and, amazing. I hope at some point I can figure out to leave some sort of legacy equivalent to somebody saying, I miss him. I wish he were still here helping us. So.
I agree. I think we all do. I've always said that when it's my time to go, that I hope I've made a difference in this world, that I've left it in some way a little better place. And I know that we'd all agree that Dwight did that. I think that there's some honors that, people need to know about. He was nominated this year for the Ed Calhoun Award by the Oklahoma State Medical Association for leadership in medicine. And that's truly the highest honor that the State Medical Association can bestow upon one of its members. And, he was still active, served as chairman on the Council on Legislation, very active in the politics and in Oklahoma, which we all know is not an easy thing in Oklahoma or anywhere at this time. So, Dwight was a remarkable physician, taking care of his kids, as he called it, and but also took time to take care of his family and to take care of the house of medicine, doctors in general. And that's not easy to do, as we all know, in private practice, especially during COVID. David, you well know, John, how busy everybody was and how much bad information was being spread at times. And he took the time to help everybody. And I think we all admire that. One of the things that I learned from Dwight was not only his passion for OU, which is why I'm wearing my OU shirt in his honor today. He was an avid Sooner fan, but also his love of cars, which, I'm not a car fan. But Dwight was an avid car fan, had a Shelby, I guess Mustang, you'd say. He worked on a 2007 Shelby Cobra, and was a big time car person. So he had multiple facets to his life, and I think that's to be admired when somebody can enjoy life like that. So while we're all sad about his passing, I think we are happy that he had such a wonderful life. So
that's an important distinct detail, that he was able to find that work-life balance. We talked so much, and Dwight really brought it up more than anybody about the mental health aspects of COVID and things like that, that we're really seeing a lot of fruit of right now in the pediatric world, in the adolescent world, young adult world. And, that he would not only preach that, but practice it, trying to find that work-life balance. I know so many doctors we all know so many doctors who have never been able to do that, who have never done a good job of that. OU football is a great, obviously a great passion and a great diversion from the practice of medicine. It's got to be tough in Stillwater being a big Sooner fan like he was, though, huh? I mean, that's really going into the Lions Den. It's impressive.
Yeah.
Carve out a living there. Just like the red and white, the crimson and green.
John?
Well, I'm just amazed. He seemed like such a responsible, distinguished voice, and now I learned that it was life in the fast lane. He probably passed me how many times on the highway, and I didn't know it was him. So, I think it's a wonderful tribute. I think you want to attract people into medicine and its lives, like Dr. Sublett's, that I think you can put out there as, having the best of so many facets. wonderful passions for his teams and his hobbies, but then able to, contribute on such a broad scale as well. If I had kids, I'd definitely sent them his way, if I'd been close enough to do that, because you could tell, there's compassion there. I mean, good people, medicine is a wonderful place for good people to find expression for their best selves. And I hope anybody who came in contact with him was inspired. Medicine needs those folks as much as they need the leadership. They need the laying on of hands of somebody is trusted and, fun. I mean, your doctor isn't a robot. And if he or she is, then, that's not very appealing. And he was appealing.
I think one of the most amazing things about Dwight that I learned in my time with him was when he moved from Stillwater to Oklahoma City area because of his grandkids, but he still drove back to Stillwater every day to practice medicine because those were his kids as well.
We needed a fast car. You got to, you need that in the Camry.
You got to outrun the OHP.
And he probably did a few times. I don't know. But I admired him for doing that. I mean, it's not easy to get up every morning, drive back, but he was dedicated to his patients, and he's to be admired for that. And I think that the mental health aspect, we talked about that, and I think Scott may have some words on that as well.
It's an interesting story. A couple of weeks ago in Oklahoma Watch, the headline was Oklahoma kindergartners are now the least vaccinated in the region. So two things that I recall from our years of doing the Fab Four, where you talked about young children and diseases that were coming back as well. And that was the very last episode we did in June of last year, where he brought up the mental health aspect of it. Could you three docs talk about those things that were constantly on his mind, vaccines and mental health challenges facing Oklahomans?
Yeah, Dwight was one of the biggest proponents and voiced it many times on air with us about vaccinations, not just COVID vaccination and all the controversy that went with that, and the delay that went with it in the pediatric population, but also just vaccinations in general and how COVID was causing kids to not receive their normal vaccinations, that they weren't going to the doctor, and how that was going to come back to haunt us. And I think we saw that in the year afterwards. David, you can speak to it a lot more than I, since I don't see kids, but you're an infectious disease doctor.
When you look around the country at the people who are the vaccine experts, they are by and large pediatricians. Think about a guy like Paul Offit, who's led a lot of the vaccine charges. Pediatricians have always been at the vanguard of the vaccination efforts because of the fact that we give them to young kids to try and prevent them from getting tetanus or Haemophilus influenza or strep pneumococcus or chickenpox or things like that. They've always been, and that's been the bedrock of pediatric care, has been making sure that the kids are getting the preventative care they need, right? We don't do as much vaccination. We, as an adult internist, for example, we think more about, mammograms and colonoscopies and kind of these screening tests, although we do still do vaccinations. But think about the first 5 years of life, how many vaccinations your children are getting. And so even during the COVID pandemic, when we talked more about vaccines in older people at first, remember how it was kind of tiered, who would get them first and those sorts of things. It was still pediatricians leading the effort because they've always been at the vanguard of that. COVID vaccine hesitancy has led to a resurgence of vaccine hesitancy across the board. We had put a lot of those arguments to bed as far as the relationship between vaccination and autism spectrum disorders. And the pediatricians were at the vanguard of that because they had to be. I mean, that's where the rubber met the road, right? So Dwight had always been a huge advocate for making sure that we were taking care of Oklahoma kids by preventing them from getting these diseases. and talked frequently about it here, talked frequently about it outside, and I'm sure brought it up many times with his patients. I know I have, and I have no doubt that he had lots of questions. And I think we've talked about what a compassionate guy he was, and what a leader he was, but he was also a really smart pediatrician. He was a really smart doctor, and he understood the science. He understood the significance of these kinds of things. And when you can tie all of that together, it's one thing, like John said, you don't necessarily want a doctor who's a robot. Robots are really, really smart, but they can't communicate. Being able to communicate the science that you know that a person knows in a compassionate manner to a person who's looking for information. And nobody's more more concerned than a parent taking care of their kid. The ability to kind of transmit that knowledge and be an advocate for those kind of things is not as common as we would hope. It's more than just reading about it on a computer. People still trust their doctors, even though they may go Google something or something like that. When you have that relationship with the patient, people still trust what their doctor says, and Dwight did a great job of doing that.
Yeah, I would just say that in addition to that, I think Dwight would probably be taking the new RSV vaccines and the combo vaccines, and he would be using that as a platform to push further thinking, right? Part of the fun of the Fab Four, and obviously Scott and Larry you guys did a great job pulling it together. It was the hope of the new, right? We were going to drive towards treatments, and we were going to drive towards prevention with regard to COVID and better understanding. I think Dwight would have been forward looking, and he would be talking about the next vaccines and what they were doing. And that would be a way to reinforce some of the hollowed out sense of vaccination hangover or whatever we've got right now. So I think part of that wisdom that he had, paint a picture of the upside, right? RSV, terrible disease, can be fatal. This is a huge step forward for us, I think, in making that common, making it standard. And that's the drumbeat of vaccination, as much prevention as you can get. And then now we look at the next horizon for COVID vaccination is to try and get it into a more settled routine, probably older adult type process or routine. And what we're finding is people aren't embracing it the way they are flu vaccines. So, and that's a weird disconnect, because actually that's the risk population that you're probably most concerned about, at least the original COVID. I know the variants have changed somewhat, but in terms of severe disease, severe outcome, a recurring variant that you might want to be protected against, it's the older population that's going to be most at risk for most variants. So again, he would be on that, I think, as an ongoing story, an ongoing educational opportunity, an ongoing exhortation to be the best team player, because a lot of our COVID conversations were about good teamwork as a community. And he struck those notes often and rightfully, and he'd be doing it now. And there's plenty of teamwork we still need, COVID related or not, beyond COVID. So again, I think there's a hole there, but there's he left a pattern, right? He left a model of what a concerned physician does is they branch out from their practice and they try and find the right microphone. We talked a lot about who had the microphone a couple of years ago, and now is a chance to reclaim it. And he's shown, smart people, caring people, they're the ones who need the microphone. They need to fight for the microphone. And thank you to Scott, and thank you to Larry for creating a microphone. If nothing else, it was therapeutic for me to have the Fab Four to talk to during COVID. And it'd be therapeutic to continue to hear voices, maybe not our four, but, other experts who want to share their knowledge and share their shaping of our future. In times of crisis or not. I guess we're always in a crisis these days. So, you're welcome to join the microphone, I guess.
Well, he was a vanguard also on the mental health. He sort of proclaimed the future when he talked about the mental health problems that would exist because of our problems during COVID times. And certainly, I think that those who are still in practice are seeing that today. I don't think there's any question that he was a beacon of light that was shining early about mental health. And he talked about it frequently and often and very eloquently. So, he had the foresight to really see what was happening in medicine to not only kids, but also to adults in that case.
Well, March 11, 2020, Dr. Bookman, is the cancellation of the Oklahoma City, Utah game. 60 days of live streams after that. And then you reached out to Doctors Armitage, Chansome, and Sublett to start doing the weeklies, which lasted until June of last year. And he was pretty much involved in that from the get-go. So we'll be missing Dr. Sublett. Last thoughts from you?
Well, it's ironic that March 11th was the cancellation. His birth date is March 11th, 1953. So some irony there that March 11th is an important date in medicine.
Final thoughts?
David?
Godspeed, good and faithful servant. We're going to be missing you. Thank you for everything. And prayers and thoughts to the Subletts.
Yeah, prayers to him and his family, and a thank you. And I know I'll carry his memory and his example forward. And I love the fact that I was joking about him being a distinguished, older type character, but he adapted to this online venue, and did a great job of conveying his humanity in a medium that doesn't always achieve that. So, yay for him, and thankful for being part of his aura. So.
From my standpoint, I admire, I thank, and will always remember Dr. Sublett and his contributions to medicine and to the Fab Four. And in his honor, Boomer Sooner.
And I got to tell you, in this time of division amongst people, the fact that you could maintain an office in Stillwater and be a Sooner fan,
Oh, yeah.
it says something.
That's something. It's amazing. I've not seen any OSU pediatrics practices in Norman. I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm just saying I haven't seen one.
Doctors, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.